Welcome, everybody, back to the Friar Talk podcast and YouTube channel. For today's episode, we're going to be discussing Bryan Reynolds to the Padres. This is not official, but is a rumor that was brought up by Bob Nightingale. It's actually been kind of a trade rumor that's been talked about for a couple weeks now. Reynolds potentially coming into San Diego to either play left field or center field. I would lean that they would want him to play left field. If you guys don't know much about Bryan Reynolds, this dude has absurd numbers, absolutely absurd numbers. If you take away his 2020 season, he has 2 years with 130 plus OPS. His career numbers over the course of 1,200 at-bats 1,400 plate appearances are a 290 batting average, a 490 slugging, an 858 OPS, and he has put up, over 10 WAR. Over 10 WAR in 3 seasons. And if you take away the 2020 year, you look at it, you go 2019, 4.2 WAR, 2021, 6 WAR. He was a 6 WAR player last season. So, question is, what would it cost to acquire a guy like Bryan Reynolds? Obviously, he would come in and make a huge impact. He is a really, really good hitter. He has 4 years of control. So, this is about as expensive as a piece as you could buy. So, Isaac, when you look at a potential deal for Bryan Reynolds, first, do you like the idea of bringing Bryan Reynolds in? Second, what do you think it would cost to get him?
Yeah, considering the state of the Padres lineup, absolutely, I love the idea of bringing him in. He's a 6 WAR player. He gets on almost 40% of the time. You kept saying take away that 2020 year. That's a shortened season, so it's absolutely, right to take that away, considering in both of the full seasons he played, he batted 300 plus with minimum 375 on base percentage and a 500 slugging percentage. I mean, those are the kind of numbers you want I'd probably lean, I don't know where he would bat, but those are the kind of numbers you want in your lineup, especially a lineup as depleted as this one right now, where you really have 2-3 legitimate power hitters and the rest are kind of a lot of toss-ups. I mean, as Padres fans, we all know we're kind of banking on a lot of bounce back seasons and a lot of breakout seasons this year. So getting somebody who's kind of solidified himself as one of the best players in baseball, like I said, a 6-4 season last year, solidified himself as a top center fielder in baseball. Now, of course, I think he'd play left field. I don't think Trent Grisham can play right or left. I don't think his arm plays either of the corner spots. I just think he's really good at covering, having a lot of range in center field. But with Bryan Reynolds, I don't know what it would take. I'd imagine the trade would be, arranged around Luis Campusano, considering, everybody's talking about on Twitter that the Pirates only have one catcher on their 40-man roster right now. So I'd imagine it'd be centered around Campusano. Probably have to throw in something like Weathers and Paddock or Merrill, I would assume. Sounds like a lot, but when you're getting a guy that's going to be controlled for 4 years, is putting up the kind of production that he's been putting up. Of course, it's a risky trade considering, Campusano is a very good hitter, is supposed to be a very good hitter, hits for a lot of power. Just he's a project behind the plate for sure. Ryan Weathers, everybody likes Ryan Weathers. Everybody likes the potential that he's flashed. That's kind of up to you if you want to trade Ryan Weathers as a fan. Do you like him enough to want to keep him? Are you okay with it? Who was the other name I brought up? Jackson Merrill. He's done really well so far in spring training. He's actually held his own, so a lot of props to him, but also very young. ETA is supposed to be like 2025, 2026. A lot of time away from that. Padres are in a win now mode, so I'd be okay with giving him up, considering you also have another shortstop that's supposed to be pretty good in the future. And then I'd imagine one more prospect would be attached to that. But just a lot of cheap guys who are supposed to be pretty good in the future help out the Pirates, because we know the Pirates don't want to take on a lot of salary.
Yeah, and it is really interesting to see what it would cost. I know that the 2 names that were mentioned in a trade were Ryan Weathers and Chris Paddock. So a lot of people have brought up those names. Campusano makes a ton of sense when you look at the Pirates' current roster, and that he could get an opportunity this season on that team. Another guy that's been brought up is Ha-seong Kim. Now, it is interesting to me just because I feel like with Ha-seong Kim, it would mean that Abrams would start at shortstop to begin the year, which I would be happy about. But with trading Ha-seong Kim, it is a little bit odd just because Ha-seong Kim makes more than Bryan Reynolds makes this year. So I don't know why that would make a ton of sense, but he's been a name that's been linked there. I think Jackson Merrill does make sense. Victor Acosta is another young prospect that plays shortstop. So you have two guys that I don't want to say like redundant because one of them could change positions. Like you don't know what your situation is going to be at that point. But Jackson Merrill's hitting really well. So he does have a pretty high value now. I've seen some people talk about James Wood. I don't think it makes much sense to trade James Wood. We're going to be doing our top 30 prospect list. And actually that is getting bumped a day down the road. So Friday, Saturday, and then Monday with the top 10. But going through it, I don't think James Wood is a guy that makes any sense to trade because I expect him to climb into the top 100 like mid-season this year. That's how I think of him. I think he's that good of a player. So now would be selling low. People have talked about trading Robert Hassel and Luis Campusano for him. While that seems extremely rich, and I think the Padres would rather trade their starting pitching depth or some of it just because they have a surplus right now. And the way the roster is constructed, you have a lot of guys fighting for a 40-man roster spot where you could come in and fill your biggest hole, which is left field right now. But if you were to trade Luis Campusano, Robert Hassel, that is a lot. However, we have to remember they're trading for a guy that's a proven MLB player that has 4 years of control and has put up star numbers in his 2 full seasons. Over a 500 slugging, over a 375 on-base percentage, which would lead the Padres, and over a 300 average, which would also lead the Padres. He would lead the Padres in 2 major categories offensively, and he's an amazing defender as well. So you're getting a player that's basically a 4-tool player outside of power, and he hit 24 home runs last year, and also last year he reduced his K rate. Like he's been improving. He's a surging star in the league. It would be interesting if the Pirates traded him, and I think you'd see a lot of Pirates fans extremely frustrated because this is their best piece right now. But I mean, I would love the idea of bringing him, and I think if you have to maybe buy a little bit high on him, it does make sense. We've talked about in the past, AJ Preller has done that in kind of a negative way, but it seems that it's hurt them more in terms of them buying high on guys, more of in free agency rather than trade-wise. Now, there are a couple cases. There's the Austin Nola deal. So we'll see how it plays out, but I really wonder what the value would be getting back. I would lean yes to trade Bryan Reynolds for Robert Hassel and Luis Campusano. Isaac, would you? Yeah.
Yeah, you're trading an outfielder to get an outfielder who's already proven, still has 4 years of control. And all you're really trading is another catcher who we already have 4 on the roster right now, getting rid of 1. We still have 3. So still, a lot of position depth at catcher, and you're trading away an outfielder to get a star outfielder. What everyone thinks is going to be a future star outfielder to a current star outfielder on a team that needs to win right now. Because, realistically, this team is built to win now. I don't think they can afford to have more years of just, being in the cellar, because last year was tough for the fan base to watch. I think it was very discouraging. I think it's I was actually very surprised to see that the season ticket membership went up. I didn't think that would happen. It broke records. So I think if you're going to be breaking records, if we're going to break records as a fan base, I think they owe it to us to give us something like this, But I am very entertained by this trade. First I was kind of like, Bryan Reynolds, I don't know about him. And then I really looked into his numbers. The guy's fantastic. If you're not buying into Bryan Reynolds yet, go look into his numbers. Baseball Savant, Baseball Reference, whatever it is, go look at it. He would have hit 28 home runs in Petco last year. Petco, if anyone read, I don't know how to say his name, Saris, I don't know. If anyone read his article, Petco is supposed to see a 13% increase in home runs this year. So that 28 might have actually gone up at Petco. Go for it.
I was just going to say, that's because they're changing like the humidity in the baseballs. So, you get the marine layer and then everything gets dragged down for like the first 3 months of the year. That's not going to be as large of a factor because now the ball is not going to be like humid like it is. I don't really know exactly how it works. I'll be honest with you guys. But basically what we're going to see is more home runs because the marine layer and just kind of the humidity in San Diego is not going to play as large of a role. Final thing to note on Bryan Reynolds, just because we had this discussion, we talked about him a couple weeks ago, but Adam Frazier is a name that will get linked to like, hey, is this a deal like this? The difference to me is Bryan Reynolds' career numbers are elite. Adam Frazier's career numbers were not elite, and he had a really good half season of baseball, and that is the huge difference. When you're looking at like what's this guy's average year, it's not like Bryan Reynolds is playing real hot for like half a season of baseball. No, he has 1,400 at-bats, which isn't a ton, but he's consistently improved, where it seemed like Adam Frazier was riding a hot streak for a while, and then they bought him, and he didn't have like his average career numbers, but his numbers in San Diego weren't that far off from like his career averages, and his year ended up finishing up like it was actually still his career year. So I think that's the large difference there. And Isaac, do you feel the same way on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a counterpoint that some people would bring up was that we basically didn't lose anything in that Pirates trade for Adam Frazier. Marcano, I haven't seen anything good about Marcano or any of the other prospects that were traded. And I think what people would say about this one is where you're giving up a lot higher level prospects for this guy than you are for Adam Frazier, giving him somebody who's what is it, 2 or 3 top 50 prospects in baseball right now. Now, I understand everybody loves their prospects, especially as Padre fans who, quite frankly, have only looked forward to our prospects in the past. So I understand why some Padres fans are prospect huggers. But that time has to stop now. I think it has to stop now because, of course, we all want a winning future. But this guy is going to be here for like 3 or 4 years. So he still provides you a winning future. He's still very cheap. He provides you financial flexibility, especially considering Will Myers is gone next year. It's not like he's going to take more than, 5 to 7 million. I think this is as good a deal as it gets. I really do. If you only have to give up 2, 3 prospects for him, I think you absolutely take it. I think Campusano's for sure going to be in there. I've seen some people bring up, well, they should take Eric Hosmer. I don't think anyone's going to take Eric Hosmer. And remember, they don't want salary on their payroll. They don't want that big salary on their payroll. That's the reason they're trying to get rid of Bryan Reynolds, because he asked for like $700K more than what they wanted to pay him. Now I've seen things from Pirates fans, Pirates reporters saying, don't worry, they're not going to trade Bryan Reynolds. And quite honestly, I don't know if it's going to happen. Like, obviously nothing's official, nothing's set in stone. I don't think it will happen because the Pirates have a lot of leverage on any team that they're going to try and trade with because he's cheap. They don't have to trade him. He'll be around for 4 more years. And he's pretty much the reason fans want to come to the ballpark. He's probably going to be their jersey sales. They have no reason to trade him. So that's kind of why I'm thinking we might have to overpay a little bit. Now, the question is, do us as fans, do we think it's worth the overpay? I will say yes. I think if you have to give up Hassel, like I said, you're getting an outfielder in return. You already have 3 catchers. You have so much starting pitching depth that you can afford to get rid of 1 or 2. Now, I understand the argument. We had a lot of injuries last year. And why would we want to get rid of pitchers if those injuries might come back to bite us in the ass this year? Well, you can realistically still trade for a low-end pitcher at the trade deadline if you really need to. There's going to be so many pitchers available. There always is every year. So I understand all these arguments for sure. But, personally, as a fan, I want to win right now. And I think this guy, if you trade for him, I think he gives you the best chance, especially considering your lineup when Tatis comes back. Tatis, Reynolds, Cronenworth, Machado, Voit. That's a heavy top 5 right there. And then you're going to have, of course, some downfalls with Eric Hosmer and Will Myers if you keep batting them back to back. But then you still have, Trent Grisham if he has a really good season. So I think he adds a lot of potential to this team. CJ Abrams also.
It'd be pretty crazy if they end up pulling this deal. And we'll see how it plays out. I'm a fan of it. I'm not necessarily in love with the idea. I think like if you're giving up a ton, there's absolutely risk, but this would make the Padres lineup so much better. You are adding an elite player to this team. Guess what? It's going to cost a lot to add an elite player, especially when he's cheap and it's via trade. Like, it's going to cost a lot. And I will say, like, if this does happen, this absolutely salvages the offseason that we've been absolutely ripping AJ Preller for, because they have enough money to pay Bryan Reynolds this year. They're going to free up another $27 million next year. You can go add another piece. Abrams will be up. Maybe Abrams starts the year. Maybe he's your starting shortstop. Say Abrams is your starting shortstop, and he's the guy that me and Isaac think he is, and you add Bryan Reynolds to the outfield. It looks a lot different than having Ha-seong Kim hit. And I know Ha-seong Kim's having a good year, but we have to look back at his numbers last year and say, how much can you truly improve from one season to the next? I still think Ha-seong Kim has value as a depth infielder, but having CJ Abrams ball out as your everyday shortstop would be amazing. And then you add an elite bat in Bryan Reynolds. And let's not act like he's just replacing average players. He's replacing a Jerkson Profar Matt Beatty platoon. That's like that's a huge shift. Having a guy that's going to have a 900 OPS, a 500 slugging, a 37.5% on base percentage, and hit 300, and play elite left field is way better than what you currently have. So this would be a huge improvement for this team, and you might have to give up some of the future, but we're going to talk about the prospect list later. Like, you still got other guys in this prospect room that can be elite players down the road. So I'm all for it. Risky, yes. Worth it, I think yes. So we'll see what happens, but it's going to cost a lot, and that's what happens when you add an elite player. So I think it's going to do it for today's episode, though. If this trade does go through, we'll probably go live right away. So just know that that's the case. We'll probably be all pumped and freaking out. But yeah, that's going to do it for today's episode. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll talk to you very soon.